Okay, so welcome to this webinar, Building a Teaching Scenario, Insights from a Training Design Perspective. We suggested this webinar in the framework of the project's training task force, because we used training design methodology to start working on the task 3.5, which is work package 3's training task. And we thought that maybe this process would be interesting for some of you partners working either on training tasks within the project or having another training activity. The scope of this webinar is to, as I said, share the methodology developed for the training in work package 3. Can you just go back, Stephanie, please? Yeah, thanks.
Sorry.
Based on training engineering concepts. First, as a basis for further work with the partners directly involved in work package 3.5, the training tasks 3.5. And for the partners concerned, we have a second meeting tomorrow morning at the same time, where we will go more hands-on into the process, explain perhaps in more detail if needed, and go into the benchmarking. So that's tomorrow. And we opened this first general part to all partners for information, eventually inspiration, maybe imitation by other training tasks, if useful. Yeah, next slide. Thanks. So there's 5 parts to this webinar, which will take 1.5 hours. I'm in the short introduction right now. Then Stephanie Mott will present the underlying concepts from training engineering, from a training engineering perspective. Then we'll go third part into the general approach and methodology based on the example of what we did in task 3.5. Then there will be a 10 minutes for personal reflection and questions. Well, actually, there'll be 10 minutes for personal reflection, and then we'll go into discussion and questions. And then lastly, we'll present the next webinar to you.
Okay. Basics to get started. The most important underlying concept is the concept of experiential learning. So the foundation of this theory are rooted in the works of John Dewey and Jean Piaget and Kurt Lewin. This is the same thing as learning by doing. So it's a cyclical process founded in experience. The process of learning is a holistic adaptation to the world and is the process of creating learning. So what you can see is the Kolb cycle. There is 4 stages in this cycle. First, the subject is doing. It is a concrete experience. Then there is a reflective observation. So the subject is reviewing. Then abstract conceptualization. The subject is thinking. And after planning. So this is active experimentation. So this is a cycle and the base of experiential learning. But how do we learn? In learning by doing, the situation is very important. The concept of situation. The learner is not a container to be filled with knowledge. The learner has structured knowledge, and some situation encountered may induce something like a cognitive mismatch. The learner cannot solve them with the representations, mental representations, and action plans he has. So the learner has to reorganize his knowledge and learn. So that's why the concept of situation is so important in this theory. In education, the aim is the acquisition of academic concepts. Scientific knowledge, like mathematics, philosophy, etc. We try to design learning experience in order to foster acquisition of this concept. These academic concepts are describable. They can be formulated. In vocational training, it's a little bit different because we want the learner to acquire professional skills. So skills is not really like theoretical knowledge. It's theoretical knowledge and something undescribable linked to the ability to know how to do. So the use of experiential learning theory is useful when aiming for skill acquisition. But what is a competency skill? Be competent, like I said before, is specific to a situation. We say, I am competent in a work situation A. It is to be able to solve the problem in this work situation A. And there can be several ways of solving a problem. Competence is not the same thing that the behavior, what we can observe. So it is different. And competence is the ability to combine theoretical and action knowledge. And we use the problem-solving approach to describe competence. Competency, so it is solving a situation. So we need to identify that a situation is a problem first. Then we need to act on this situation, and we need to assess the effect of our action on the situation and on ourselves. For us, the question is how to foster skill acquisition, those professional skill acquisition. We need to define training objectives in terms of professional skills. So first, in our task, we need to identify the observable behaviors expected in a task. So we need to define the target, the work situations that we are aiming at, and to identify the critical tasks in this work situation. Then we formulate objectives with action verbs as precisely as possible. So this is the same thing. First, we analyze the target and the work situation. Then we build a skill framework. To build the training, it is important to define the skill objectives and to build learning situation linked to what is problematic in work situation. We have to build a learning situation. It's the same thing like build problem to solve. And the learner will have to solve the problem of this situation by combining his previous knowledge and the theoretical knowledge made available by the trainer to solve the problem. But building learning situation, it will be the subject of the first of the next webinar. Sorry. And now Stephanie and I, we are going to show you how we built the skill framework. and then next time we will show you how to build the learning situations. Okay. So now we are going to show you with our example in the task 3.5 the different stages of this approach. So the first question, our first question was, what is the main target in this training activity? We want organic seeds to be of better quality, germination and health. So we want producers and seed companies to produce organic seed of better quality. It is assumed that lack of skills is one of the levers for organic seed producers to produce and maintain optimal quality seed. Is the lack of skills really the problem? What I am saying seems trivial, but often we train people to improve their skills in order to solve a problem. However, sometimes skills are not the main gap to bridge, so it's important to always keep a system approach.
So in our case, when building live seeding, we defined that some of the problems with seed quality might be addressed by training and that it is a problem of skills, a question of skills. And structurally, so the work package 3 is about seed production and seed quality. And we're combining several tasks, with task 3.5 addressing skills through trainings, but there are also other tasks that will maybe other problems are more related to a need for research. So those are covered in other tasks. Some problems may also be addressed more by work organization. That's not something we'll cover in this work package. Maybe we'll also identify gaps, for example, in regulations. So that's something that is covered elsewhere in the project. But basically what we want to say here is that this question of what is a problem of skills and what isn't was identified before the project was funded when we designed the project.
If the answer is yes, for whom? Who is the target? Which public should be trained so that in the end the seeds are of better quality? Is it farmers, technicians of seed companies, their managers, salesmen who sell seeds, and so on? So the question is very important. Who is the target? Or it can be several targets, but it's very important to list all the targets.
So in our task, we addressed this question at the kickoff meeting mainly with those partners who will be trainers in the project and who will be giving pilot trainings. So there's 5 of us, and basically each involved partner has somewhat different target audience or a different combination of target audiences. So here you see the flip chart that we jotted down in the flip chart at this interactive session. And so the next slide is basically the same and lists the different target groups that we identified. So as I said, not all partners involved in the trainers want to cover each of the target groups, but the target groups we identified are farmers' seed networks, so farmers producers for producing on-farm seed and their networks, contract seed producers, handcraft small-scale seed enterprises, and large-scale multinational seed companies. And for each of these target groups, we are aiming at producers and or their advisors, trainers. And for all these target groups, we can differentiate between beginners and experts, in the sense also of beginners in organic production. So we have people who are experimented in seed production, but not in organic. And we have people who are experimented and knowledgeable on organic production, but who are beginners for seed production. So these are different aspects that can be taken into account when designing this training.
Now, since we have defined all the targets, it's important to define the scope of the analysis and to describe the tasks and identify the critical tasks. So we have to ask what is the objective for our target when he is in his work activity, and it's different between the producers and the advisors and the salesmen, the manager. Their work activities are different, so it is really important for each target to ask what is the objective of our target when he's working. What are the tasks of this activity? So we have to list all the tasks and what are the critical tasks related to this activity, those which, if not mastered, will not allow to obtain quality seeds and which are not easy to master.
So in our case, this is also something we covered at the interactive session at the kickoff meeting. So the process was that as a preparation, I had tried to list all the tasks involved in organic seed production, from choosing the adequate species and varieties to the cropping season, to the harvest, and to the post-harvest steps. And so this was listed, and at the interactive session at the kickoff meeting with the concerned partners, first we added any tasks that I had forgotten to cover really everything. And then just with sticky dots, we prioritized and thought about which of these tasks are critical. So which of these tasks are really important and critical to be successful in producing quality seed. So here you have again the same content, but in a somewhat clearer form. And the red stars indicate the priority that was given to the different tasks. So you can see that, yeah. Can you go back? Thanks. For example, placing the crop geographically in the geographically and in the crop rotation was just really critical when establishing the crop. And then we have two tasks that are particularly critical post-harvest. So that's providing adequate storage conditions and identifying issues with seed quality and health. One important information is that in our task, we decided not to cover all of the process the first year. And in the first year, we will concentrate on designing trainings and training content modules for the harvest and post-harvest part. So everything that concerns seed quality and seed health, going from the harvest to the post-harvest and packaging, and the entire part concerning field production will be covered in the second year. So don't be surprised that for now in our example, we'll be focusing on that second part, well, on the part from harvest and post-harvest.
So when this task framework has been built, we tried to produce the skill framework, that is to say, the training objectives framework. So to transform the task into skills to be acquired, we use action verb and precise wording. So for example, the task is sanitize seed. To formulate it in skills to be acquired, we say define a strategy to consider constitute and maintain homogeneous and quality seed lots. So that's what we did for all the tasks Stephanie presented to you.
So as I said, we focus on the part that is in the green box, from harvest, drying and storing the seed to sanitizing seed. So if we want to define this in the form of a skill to be acquired, the first would be defining an optimal harvesting and threshing or extraction strategy. Secondly, defining a sorting and or cleaning and drying and storage strategy. And thirdly, define a strategy to constitute and maintain homogeneous and quality seed lots. And so we also, again, put these three main skills or competencies. You'll see in the second step, we will break down each competence into sub-competencies. But for now, we'll just take each of these main competencies and put them and check for each of our defined target groups which are most relevant for each of the target groups. So you see that, for example, the three main competencies, are considered relevant for farmer seed networks. For contract seed producers, for example, we consider that defining an optimal harvesting and threshing or extraction strategy is critical. Defining a sorting, drying and storage strategy is too, but the part on really the core part on seed quality, defining a strategy to constitute homogeneous and quality seed lots, this will be in this case provided by the seed company, so it's not relevant for contract seed producers. Then for handcraft small-scale seed enterprises, we thought that all these aspects are moderately relevant, and the same for large-scale seed producers. And we were wondering, we had discussions on this with Stephen, whether we as a project have anything to teach the large-scale multinational seed companies on constituting and maintaining homogeneous and quality seed lots. Right.
And we identified 2 levels of difficulty also, which is important to build a learning situation.
Yeah, the ones that we mentioned earlier. So taking into account that there's beginners who start an organic seed production activity, and experts, those, for example, who already have a seed production activity on organic farms and want to develop this, because as mentioned earlier, the learning situations that we will build and propose won't be the same for these different kinds of actors. And then we thought that there's also another level of difficulty that can be taken into account, which is more according to crop type, crop species, because, for example, in the domain of cereals, we have producers who are already producing grain, and so producing grain and producing seed requires different skills, but probably the skill set doesn't have to be extended as much as when we're speaking of vegetable crops with vegetable producers who have to go produce seed, in particular for the biannual crops, where this means taking the crop a year further.
Yes. So, like Stephanie said, when we analyze the work of those targets, it is very important to identify what is difficult, the critical tasks, and to identify why it's difficult, because it will be useful for you when you are going to build the learning situation. We will use the difficulties identified in this analysis to build a learning situation. So this is very important to try to identify those difficulties. So Like Stephanie said, in order to establish the competency framework, the major skill must be broken into sub-competencies. So for each competency we presented, we tried to identify several sub-competencies. And this is those sub-competencies which will allow us to produce the specification, training objective and sub-objectives. So it allows the client to order training courses from one or more service providers that meets its expectations. So Stephanie, it's the example.
In our example, the first main competency was defining an optimal strategy to harvest and thresh or extract seed. And the two sub-competencies associated is deciding when and how to harvest. And this in turn can be declined into firstly identifying the maturity stage of a seed, then identifying the maturity stage at the plant or field level, then identifying and taking into account the other factors, such as weather conditions, availability of equipment and labor force, to decide on the optimal time for harvest, then making a decision taking into account that combination of factors, and finally, being aware of the different harvesting methods available, the possible types of equipment, and their advantages and disadvantages. The second sub-competency associated to defining an optimal strategy to harvest and thresh or extract seed is implementing the extraction or threshing method, so that if it's dissociated from plant harvest, which is broken down firstly into evaluating the moisture rate in the harvest material, usually by touch. And this is critical, especially for large seeds which break at threshing if too dry. So that identifies a difficulty, for example, that can be taken into account when designing a learning situation. Secondly, implementing the extraction process by fermentation, for example, identifying the risk of extracting too early or too late in the fermentation process, and finally, identifying the stage of the fermentation process to optimize seed extraction. So that's in case of extraction by fermentation.
So what happened next for us in task 3.5?
I mean, sorry, Stephanie,
yes.
Just to say, so the example we just gave is for the first of the three main competencies. So we are not taking the time here to present the two others, but if you want more information on that, well, the partners involved in task 3.5 will cover this tomorrow. We'll have a look at the others tomorrow and how they were broken down. And if anyone else wants the information, just let us know after the webinar.
So what happened next for us? We will identify existing training systems and material, which is benchmark, to prioritize what needs to be produced and to build on what already exists to produce. Then we will produce the learning pathway, so the pedagogical objectives and learning situations and their modalities, face-to-face classroom, virtual classroom, e-learning, on-the-job training, and we can mix all those modalities. Then we will produce the learning materials. So like you can see, there is several stages before produce the learning materials. And sometimes we go straight away to produce learning materials without doing those stages, but it's necessary to do a benchmark and to produce the learning pathway.
So now in our training tasks in work package 3, we're exactly in that phase. So that's what we'll start tomorrow with the partners based on the skills framework that we will be proposing. we now need to benchmark. That is identifying any training systems or training devices or training offer that already exist and meet or partially meet one of our three main objectives. So that's basically also in the idea that we don't want to reinvent hot water, and anything that is already available and that can be used, we can indicate to trainers, but we don't need to produce new material. So the benchmark consists in identifying training offers and training resources that already meet or partially meet our three main objectives. And then that's a basis for then at a later stage producing complementary material, either to improve or to complement what already exists and is already on offer.
Okay, so now we suggest personal reflection and questions. So maybe Stephanie, you can start, and I open the Scramble.
Shall I'll put the link to the Scrambler on in our conversation. So as Stephanie Mott said, please take 10 minutes to think about the three following questions. The first is quite general. Do you have any questions or need for clarification on the approach? Then, as regards your own training activity, be it in a task of this project or beyond or outside the project, does this presentation change things in the way you consider or will in future consider your training activities and tasks? If so, what does it change? And thirdly, in your training activity, is there anything you think you will implement from what you learned in this webinar, and will it change the way you conduct your training tasks? So the link to the whiteboard in Scrambler is divided into three according to these three questions. So again, are there any questions for clarification on the approach? I mean, if this is really something that's blocking you to think about the others, you can, if there's anything that really needs clarification, just ask now. And then in your own training activity, does the presentation of the methodology change things in the way you consider or will in future consider your training tasks? If so, what does it change? And thirdly, in your own personal training activity, what do you think you will implement? Or is there anything you think you will implement from what we presented this morning? Does it change anything in the way you will conduct your training activity or training task? Yeah, so the idea is that now you take 10 minutes to think about it individually, unless of course you have any important general questions that are blocking you to think about the rest, then just ask now. And in the Scrambler, I don't know if you have been able to open it, and if you're familiar with it, but basically in the lower left you have these two symbols for notes and for post-its, so you can click on add a note or post-it and then add your comment and stick it into the right into the one of the three areas on the whiteboard. I noticed that if you have for example a question, often the post-its are quite small, so maybe you want to prefer a note. Okay, so now that you've all taken some time to reflect on this morning's presentations related to your own plans for trainings or already existing training activity, we can go into the board, and there's not that many post-its, so I think we can take time for each of you to comment the post-its that you've added. For the general questions and clarifications, I think they're clear enough. Someone is interested in finding out more about the critical reflection part of the ELF cycle. and how to implement it. Maybe Stephanie, do you have any resources on that specifically that you can share? I don't know who posted this, who would be interested, and maybe if you can specify.
Yes, I have some things, but I think we will see that at the next webinar.
On the learning situations, based
Yes.
on what we've seen today, how you design learning situations. Okay.
How to foster the abstract conceptualization.
So for the person who posted this, it will be the next webinar will be of particular interest. And then there's a note to dedicate some time to naming and the glossary to consider the language barriers. So that I guess this concerns this morning's webinar or generally in training situations.
Yeah. It's me, Matthias. It's general and also this morning. It's something that came out from Dynaversity, and I think that when you train, we all are not English native speakers. So when we do a training, we really need to be careful about names. What is for you conservative varieties or a heirloom varieties? I mean, to be clear at the beginning of the training, this topic of the naming. So it's a general note that I had listening at your presentation this morning. Yes.
Thanks. So indeed, I think this in general is important, and especially when we were discussing with Stephanie Mott preparing this webinar, we realized that it's very technical knowledge. Plus, Stephanie explained to me that each country or each language region has their own concepts and their own specific terms associated to training methodology and training design. So yeah, maybe Stephanie, you were suggesting that we could perhaps add we can share the presentation of this morning and maybe add a glossary. Is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. Then in the second part, what changes in the way you consider or will consider your training activities? So perhaps the people who contributed the 3 yellow notes can just comment and explain. So the first, for example, integrate online interaction spaces. Can you specify what you mean more precisely? Maybe the person has left. Okay. The second is try to implement the critical task and subtask method to define training content. And the person who posted this one, maybe specify.
Yeah, no, it's me, just Matteo. And also the next note is mine. So just like what you're presenting, and I think I'd like to use it in our context here. So
Thanks. So your context is the Rete Semirurali context?
yes, it's our network, and mainly activities with farmers and other value chain stakeholders that are closely linked to local seed systems. And connected to this, I found it interesting paying attention to the different levels of competency and complexity. But one thing that it could be challenging is that you may have in the same group all the different situations. So then you have to find a way where the training is beneficial to all, but there can be different levels of experience, and then people dealing with different crops, although maybe not so much that, but more the level of experience.
Thanks, Matteo. Then in the third part, what will you implement change in the way you conduct your training? Someone said, start with discussing the situation that pointed to the need for the learning objective. And the second is we have to improve our crop-specific training materials more detailed and situation-based for different possibilities. Does anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, I posted the first one, me, Steven, and for me, I think when you in your presentation you gave it, I think it underscored more that you at the start not start directly with a lecture, but start on discussing what is the experience of the the people who attend there. What is the problem that you have, and then make that a kind of then the conclusion why you have this learning objective and why you start with that. And at the same time, with such a discussion, you can get more. You learn as a trainer more what is the knowledge already present with the participants, and how they can interact with each other. Also, that you're not the only trainer, but they learn also from each other, and so that's I think the way you gave this presentation pointed me more to put more emphasis on this.
The second one I did wrote from the experience of Bingenheimer Saatgut. We have special descriptions of seed production and of course also harvesting, etc. For every crop we want to be produced at the farms of the Initiative Circle and the producers, but the training material is not enough specified to the special conditions people often have. So when we describe the harvesting, for example, of beans, then we do not mention enough the specific situations and also the specific needs and demands which are derived from the lots, from the seed lots. You have another situation when you have to produce hectares of seeds, or when you have to produce only small amounts. It is different in the production, and it is different maybe in the harvesting, and also different in the needs of drying and storage, etc. So we have to differentiate our material, our training material, especially for the newcomers, but also for those who are already long time in the seed production with a lot of experience. But for example, when they have done long time small amounts of, for example, leek or something like that, they and now they have to produce much more because the need is increasing. Then they have to learn new methods and to work with new machines, something like that. Yeah, this was my point. Thank you.
Thanks. And Gebhard, for now, if I remember correctly from our previous discussions, you have this more the written material, the let's say manual for the different crops, but then you also, I guess, you have annual meetings between the producers. And would you say that this covers partly with to connect with what Stephen was saying, the different producers who are maybe working in different situations at different scales, that they're also training each other and learning from, this producer has a different situation or is producing a larger amount, and that this partly covers the aspects.
Yes, absolutely. My experience is when we meet at a farm in our annual meetings in summer, for example, discussing tomato seed production, then the advisors give the material, the written material to the audience, and then the discussion starts. Oh, why it is written in this way? I do it in another way, and then discussion in between the different producers starts, and it is very helpful. But as I see, it is not enough. The consequence is not enough realized to have different descriptions. And when a new person comes, she gets the old description, for example. But of course, yes, we have the meetings, and also our advisors with a lot of experience, they go to the farms, and when somebody starts, they visit the farm maybe 2 or 3 or 5 times a year to help and to ensure that the work is well done and the harvest is with success.
I don't know, Stephanie, I had the impression maybe this is also something that we will cover when designing learning situations. Some learning situations
Yes.
are exactly that, farm visits or exchanges among peers, and
Yes.
identify some ways to really, for these situations to be the most productive and the most efficient, so that learners also take home things that they can really implement.
Yes. We will try. Yes.
That's right. Thank you for these contributions. Is there anything that participants want to add? We thought maybe it would be interesting to hear from those of you who are leading training tasks and other work packages, if how you are proceeding, how you're proceeding in your training tasks, what your objectives are. So I don't know, is Jöngi participating? I know Jöngi is responsible for training. Mathieu is responsible for the training task force. I don't know, Freya, if you're responsible for a training task. I don't know if Freya is still with us.
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay.
Somehow, yes, we have this week we have a training on this European router database for the authorities, and next week we have this training for the suppliers. So yes, we have some trainings, but maybe it's a bit different because we now have this system already in place, and it's more tutorial how to use this database. So we go step by step and demonstrate each function. But I think for future, maybe we have this capacity building strategy task. There we will have some webinars, and maybe we need to consider this.
Thanks. So I see Maria said that she's responsible for training task 5.4, but it's not easy to interact for the moment because she's with her son. So Maria, I just suggest if there's anything you want to add or anything you want to contribute, you just don't hesitate to send us an email once your son is better. I hope that
Mariano
will
would
be
like
soon.
something also.
Yeah.
Mariano, you can go ahead if you want.
Okay, thank you. No, I was writing in the chat. I'm not responsible for any particular training, but as I wrote, I'm interested as member of the task force and in general for the project in following some of these discussions and have an oversight. And then I was writing, I didn't write the message, the post-it on integrated online interaction spaces, but I think it's interesting and useful. Matteo, at some stage, in some other conversations where I raised this, mentioned this training platform space that Organic Seeds Alliance in the US uses, and probably we can have a look at that, or some other platform. But I think it would be useful if we gather all these materials in some common space platform so they don't get lost, I think. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariano.
Thank you.
I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else to the discussion. I think for us from the discussion as a take-home message is to send you the slides with the glossary, fix a date and send you the description for the second webinar, which will be on learning situations. And for those of you who are involved in this specific training task 3.5, normally you received an invitation for tomorrow's meeting. Now, I saw in parallel, Stephen Roth sent me a mail that he didn't receive the invitation, that he wasn't aware of tomorrow's meeting. So that we have to check. We'll check that right after the meeting.
Yes. Okay. So I don't know, maybe I made a mistake when I sent the invitation.
Well, we can check right after the meeting.
Yes.
Maria, I saw you said you didn't receive it either, but that seems normal because it's really for those partners who will be involved in training in the work package 3 on seed production, and I don't think you. Okay, yeah. We agree. Perfect. Stephanie, do you want to continue with the last part?
No, I think it's finished. I think. Yes.
Yelena didn't receive the invitation either, so we have to check that.
Yes. Yes, it was just a presentation of the next webinar. We will talk about learning situation, how to build the problem to be solved, and I will speak about modalities also, face-to-face classroom and virtual classroom, e-learning, and on-job training. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you all. And yeah, see you hopefully at the next webinar on learning situations.
Thanks for organizing this. Take care. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Merci. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.